How many of you fellows watching remember all those years ago when War Thunder announced their naval mode? How excited so many were, for a couple of reasons. One, War Thunder was expanding into naval combat, and two, it would finally give Warships a potential competitor in the naval combat arcadey big gun scene, right? And at first, the War Thunder naval mode was just boats, right? Small attack boats, patrol boats. Eventually they got up to some more sizable, like littoral zone boats, and eventually they did add in destroyers, proper ships and such. And from destroyers they went from, well, they started with destroyer escorts, then to proper destroyers, then to light cruisers, then heavy cruisers, then eventually we got the Graf Spee in War Thunder, and then we got actual battleships like the Scharnhorst and some of the earlier battle cruisers in World War I era dreadnoughts and such. And now today, in the year of our Lord 2024, after years of development, there are quite a number of larger caliber battleships in game, like the Hood, the Arizona, those 15-inch, 14-inch armed battleships. And well, I have never seen this mode as dead as it is now. And while you're watching in the background, I filmed this on a Friday evening around 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock US Central Time. So prime time game time for gamers, right? At this moment in time, you could hop into Warships, get into a top tier game in a few seconds, and it'll be completely full. Half of the players you see on screen for each side are bots in War Thunder. Because, well, even after sitting for 5 minutes, this is what I could get. A team that's half bot, and I'm pretty sure half of the actual players on either side are actual bots too, just sitting there grinding away their little non-existent souls. Because, well, despite all of Gaijin's best efforts, they just can't get the formula down. Now, War Thunder is a very interesting game. If you've never played it, it is a vehicular combat game that is still arcadey, but it leans more into the realism aspect, if you will. For example, World of Tanks, World of Warplanes, and World of Warships. They are vehicular combat games that are arcade-based, but they lean more into the arcadey side. You have consumables and such that magically repair your ship. You have damage con that will magically instantly put out all fires and floods across your ship at once, and there's of course similar consumables in World of Tanks as well. War Thunder has lots of mechanics and such that are similar to that, but they're based more in reality, right? You have a fire extinguisher that you use to put out fires, but it doesn't instantly put it out. It takes a few seconds for it to work its magic. Like you're watching the background right now, when my Scharnhorst gets set on fire, it takes a few seconds for the crew to put it out, same with the flooding and such, so forth and so on. So while they are similar games, they take different approaches to mechanics like that. And of course, this comes into play with the aiming as well. Aiming in War Thunder Naval is much more in-depth. You have to take into consideration your ship's movement and the enemy ship's movement and any movements you're making and any moves they might make. And in World of Warships, those same concepts are there, but when you click X on a target, the game automatically does it for you, and then you can adjust where exactly you want to aim. And, well, you see, War Thunder, without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, the ground combat, the tanks, the armored vehicles, the self-propelled AA, the artillery combat, that is, in my opinion, much better than World of Tanks. And World of Warplanes, I mean, the flight model in World of Warplanes versus the flight model in War Thunder, it's not even a competition in my mind. Like, you could argue that World of Tanks is funner than War Thunder Ground because it's more casual. You can hop in, play a few rounds, and not get too frustrated. Whereas in War Thunder Ground combat, you could get one-shotted so much because people know exactly where to aim, and there's no health bar or anything like that. You knock out the tank's engine, you have to sit there and repair it, you kill the crew, you're out of the game, you hit the ammo rack and you're done. And in World of Tanks, there's that health bar system in place to kind of alleviate a lot of that. That doesn't exist in War Thunder Ground, but I still like it more. And again, War Thunder Air just smashes World of Warplanes. But World of Warships just has this system down without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, because naval combat, especially early 20th century naval combat, you know, 1900s through 1940, 1950, before CVs became super prominent, right? Or I should say, the time at which CVs became super prominent, which ended the big gun naval combat naval doctrine. It's kind of boring. And if you go back to some of my older War Thunder Naval videos, that's what they were going for. You would be shooting at other ships from like 20 kilometers away, and 20 kilometers in the War Thunder game scale is 20 kilometers. Whereas in World of Warships, 20 kilometers is more like maybe 10-ish kilometers, right? To War Thunder scale. So in the original version of War Thunder Naval, when you had this blue water combat, you would literally be shooting at pixels from across the map. And if you go back and watch some of my earlier War Thunder Naval videos, you'll see that that's exactly what I'm doing. In fact, in a lot of those videos, I am leaning into my screen to see what the hell's going on and where my shells are going, because of, you know, again, how in-depth and how intricate the aiming system is. Now, one thing that they have done, which is quite noticeable, is that they have pushed the combat closer together with naval, to where you're engaging each other from, a lot of times, within 10 kilometers, which in War Thunder scale is still pretty far away, right? But it's much, much closer than it used to be, and I do appreciate that. And they've done a lot with the aiming system and such to kind of dumb it down and make it easier. As you can see in the top left-hand corner, they added in this indicator that shows you exactly where your shells are falling on your target ship, which is very nice. Even shows you the angle orientation that they have to your ship. So again, it helps you a lot more in aiming there. And given how little assistance you receive in War Thunder's other modes, and keep in mind, this is naval realistic, right? For those of you that don't know, War Thunder has an arcade and a realistic and a sim mode that you can play in. Arcade, the physics are, you know, more arcadey. You get aim assist and such, and in the form of, you know, there's like a reticle that'll pop up on screen that'll show you where to aim at when it comes to like aviation gameplay. And against ground vehicles, you get an indicator that glows red if you can't penetrate that part of the tank's armor, in yellow if you can kind of do it, and then green if you definitely can do it. In realistic, you don't get any of that in aviation or in ground. But here we are in naval realistic, where they're giving you all types of indicators and stuff to help you hit your target, which again is very telling of how unfun, more realistically styled naval gameplay is. And even with all these changes, again, at 8 to 9-ish o'clock on a Friday night, I can't get into a full match in War Thunder Naval. And this is top tier. This is 7.0. This is where naval peters out at. This is where all the big name ships are at. Hood, Arizona, Scharnhorst, and there's nobody playing it. There's 5 real people per team, so 10 players in this mode. Again, the lobby's half full. The other half are bots and such. And some more frustrating parts about this is that, just like in ground, if you know where to aim, it's not hard to one-shot a lot of these ships if your guns are big enough. Especially when you're in something like the Scharnhorst and you're going up against cruisers. If you can just get your shells to go into their magazine, they're done. And of course, in World of Warships, there's a random chance that may or may not happen once your ship is below a certain HP point. But in War Thunder Naval, you can one-tap a full health ship with no problem, which is, of course, super frustrating, because now, well, there you go. The other frustrating part about this, too, is, ironically, planes. And while the AA in War Thunder Naval is a lot more effective than in World of Warships, if the pilot doesn't really care about, well, his continuation of his existence, then he can just one-shot you with bombs. because again, War Thunder is much more realistic, and if you know where to put the bomb at on the ship, then well, you can one-tap ships with bombs. And again, if you don't care about being able to fly away after, you can make darn sure that's going to happen. So yeah, throw in the fact that someone might be a little bit salty that you sunk them. They're going to spawn in a plane afterwards and come after you, and now your battleship that you've been able to sit there and tank so much damage in, it gets one-tapped by one guy in a plane, which is a little frustrating, right? Now, the other mechanics about War Thunder Naval I like. In fact, I like a lot of the mechanics of War Thunder Naval. I like the crew mechanic. I like the fighting the flooding mechanic, the repairing. I like a lot of what's here, because again, it's not that all that dissimilar from World of Warships. It's just a little bit more, again, realistic, a little bit more grounded in reality. But it's just, again, the way that War Thunder works as to why this mode's pretty much dead. The fact that you can, again, reliably hit one part of a ship constantly in one shot your target and be one-shotted, and how a lot of it just comes down to who has the biggest gun with the most penetration at the end of the day, and also who has the tankiest ship with the most armor at the end of the day. There's not really too many ways around that, because, I mean, your ship's HP is essentially your crew. And your crew is scattered throughout the ship, just like HP points in World of Warships. You know, all the different compartments and such, and World of Warships has so much HP. It's very similar what they do here with the crew. You have a certain amount of crew on your deck, which is why you see these battleships. They go from 99% crew to like 50%, like that, because everyone on deck gets fried by all the HE spam. But after that, the rest of the crew is distributed in the armored hull of your ship, which of course you need large caliber guns in order to get there, or you have to be able to poke enough holes in the ship one way or another to allow the ship to lose enough buoyancy to where it'll sink. Either way takes for friggin' ever, again, unless you have the battleship with the bigger guns that can get through the armor and then murder all those crew members chilling inside the armored hull of your ship, because that, again, is just how War Thunder boils down to when it comes to artillery gameplay. You know, either you gotta know where to hit them when it comes to like tanks and stuff, but again, when it comes to ships, gotta get through the armor one way or another, or eventually you can literally wade through them by HE spamming them, but it does take forever for that to happen, right? So these modes are these matches are long. They take, golly, just the matches for the background. I played 3 matches and I was playing this game for about an hour and a half, and yeah, I mean, like, I know we always talk about how fast games end in World of Warships, but man, they go on forever in War Thunder Naval. So, I mean, again, I don't dislike what's here. It's just, you know, it's hard to sit down and say, hey, I'm going to spend an hour and a half playing this naval mode where, you know, I'll make a little bit of progress because the grind in War Thunder is crazy. The grind in naval isn't really that bad compared to the rest of the game, but it still takes a hot minute to get anywhere. And again, when you're grinding for ships in a mode where you're playing against mostly bots most of the time, it's not really that fun. It's boring. It's slow paced. And again, I know naval combat is, like, by its nature slow paced, but I don't know, still after all these years of this mode being out, and even with them trying to, you know, close the engagement ranges, make it easier for you to get shots on target to where it'll help speed up the mode a little bit, it's still just, it just isn't that fun. Again, I think Wargaming just found the magic balance with World of Warships to where they get the right balance between, you know, being inspired by real life ships and history, but throwing in enough arcadey mechanics to where it's fun, where you can pick it up, play a few rounds, and feel like you got something done, and then dip off for the night. You just don't get it with War Thunder Naval. And I don't know, maybe if they stick with it, eventually they'll bring some of the players back. I don't know. I mean, like, again, they've got some pretty big name ships in there that when they were released in World of Warships, you know, people went crazy. Again, like the Arizona, the Hood, Scharnhorst, right? I guess if they eventually get to like the Bismarck and the Iowa and the Yami and the, you know, those huge name ships. Maybe it'll draw some people back to them. But, I mean, again, when you're playing on prime time and half of your high tier games are populated by, well, not half of the high tier, every single high tier game I played, half the teams were bots, is what I'm trying to say. It's not a great indicator to your mode's health, fella. So, guys, that's my experience checking out War Thunder Naval. I don't think I've played it since, like, man, I think it's been about a year since I did a video on it, so I thought I'd hop in for some time, see how it's doing, and it ain't doing so great. So, let me know what you guys think about Naval. What do you think its problem is? Do you think it has a chance of coming back in popularity? Let me know in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Sunday, wonderful rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.